morning. My name is Walter True. I'm the impartial arbitrator appointed to hear this case and the panel chair. To my right is Fred D'Angelo, the Commonwealth appointed arbitrator, and to my left is Sean Welby, the Association appointed arbitrator. We're going to move pretty quickly right into the union's presentation, but just for everyone's benefit, we'll do some introductions of the advocates. So, Todd, if you'll start by introducing your team.
Thank you, Mr. Arbitrator. My name is Attorney Todd Egan from Lightman, Welby, Stoltenberg, and Caputo. Next to me is Attorney Christopher Cook, Lightman, Welby, Stoltenberg, and Caputo. And to his left is Roy Pinto, President of the Pennsylvania State Corrections Officers Association.
Thank you. Brian?
Good morning, Mr. Arbitrator, members of the panel. My name is Brian Casala, Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney. To my right is Brian Olds with the Commonwealth Bureau of Labor Relations. And to Brian's right is Jim Sullivan, also with Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we're going to turn it over to the association for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Arbitrator. Thank you to the arbitration panel. This morning, we're going to begin with an opening statement from Gary Lightman.
Thank you, Todd. Is this functioning? I guess not.
Slow.
Okay. All right, I think we got it. It is a pleasure to have an opportunity to address all of you, albeit briefly. I just had a few things that I wanted to say. Most of you that have been or are involved in this case know that I have retired from the active practice of law, although many people think I did that years and years ago. But I, having left, was beginning to feel quite proud looking back at my career, feeling that I had an opportunity throughout my whole life representing good guys, good people. And so therefore I felt that I had paid my debt to society and could relax and know that I've done a good thing. After a while I got to meet a few people, this gentleman to my right, who I didn't know. And I found out something that was actually shocking to me. Having spent 40 years of my life representing police officers in the law enforcement community, knowing the strong bond among them, I found out that there was a whole group of people that got left behind. A whole group of people that have dedicated their lives to law enforcement as well and were never on my radar screen and on so many others. And I want to briefly talk to you about my experience with them. And it began, and as a matter of fact, it's interesting. Up on the screen, you see a slide with some interesting people there. Sirhan, Charles Manson, Mahmoud Abu Jamal, and Ira Einhorn, whose family many later. But the reason I wanted that slide to appear is to begin with this concept. And that is that these people once drew your attention rather dramatically. I doubt, of course, a lot of these people in the room weren't born when some of these names appeared on newspapers and televisions across this country. However, everyone who was alive back then was riveted to Sirhan and Charles Manson and Abu Jamal and Ira Einhorn. Riveted to them. The police officers that had the privilege of pulling those dirt bags off the street, I am sure felt very good that they could go home to their families and say, I was involved in a major investigation, and guess who I arrested, and guess who I got off the street. And the district attorney that had the privilege of prosecuting, those people felt very good that he or she was able to put that person in jail. And the judge that was able to sentence them to death or to life imprisonment felt good that he or she was able to accomplish a good. But there's one other group of people out there that every day that you're not thinking of Charles Manson or Sirhan or Mumia Abu Jamal, Every day that they're now off your radar screen, because the police did their job, and the DA did his job, or her job, and the judge did. But the corrections officer is still doing that job every day. Looking at Sirhan, they haven't forgotten, and Charles Manson, and the scum of the earth, dealing with them every single day, because that's their job. They can't push that aside, they have to deal with them. So that was the first thing that I was learning from some of the people, Roy and the people close to him. And it was interesting to me. It was interesting, not life-changing, interesting, that I was thinking that, gee, here's a whole section of law enforcement I wasn't aware of. So then came phase 2 of my education, prison tours. They decided that it would be good for me to go through jails. They thought that the meager time I spent as a juvenile was not a learning experience enough for me. So therefore, doing prison tours was something that they thought would be educational. And I will say this about prison tours, and just so you know, you're not going on any. And I'll
I
explain.
had the pleasure. As a visitor.
Okay. I thought I remembered you. When I refer to Selly in the future, you'll know it's a nickname we developed. So I'm doing these prison tours, and I will admit that clanging of the gates, the smells, the sounds, get to you. I mean, it's like, wow, this is really something. But I'll tell you what hooked me, and I'll tell you what brought me to this table with a suit and a tie, because I swore to God 4 years ago I was done with this. But what brought me here was one CO, and I don't even know if he's in the room. I have no idea if he's in the room. But I want to tell you the story that brought me here. I was touring an institution, I won't even say which one it was, but it doesn't really matter. And I got to a very busy intersection. And when I say busy, these are inmates that are going up in every direction. And standing in the intersection was one CO with, just trying to pay attention to everything that's going on up and down these hallways. So I walked up to him and I said, do you have any idea what kind of criminals you got here? I mean, so you know which ones to look out for and how to deal? And he said, no, I don't. And I said, let me tell you something. I said, I'm just taking this tour. I'm not an inmate. I'm just taking a tour. But when I get back, I'm going to recommend that you have access to their records so you know what you're dealing with here so you can protect yourself. He said, let me explain something to you. He said, I have total access to their records. If I wanted to, I would know every single crime, every dirty deed every one of these people did. So I said, why would you want to do that? And he said, don't you understand? I have to deal with these people every day. Every day I have to look in their eyes. I have to deal with them. I have to treat them as a human being. And he said, the last institution I was in, there was a man who murdered a young girl in a church. Raped her and murdered her in the church. And he said, I had to see that man every day, and I had to treat him as a human being. He said, you have no idea how hard that is to do, but that's my job, and I had to do it. And now that I'm here, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. As far as I'm concerned, this is my job. I don't want to know what crimes these people did. That hooked me. That hooked me. And it wasn't the sounds, and it wasn't the smells, and it wasn't the sights. It was the people that are committed to doing this job. This job. And I felt frankly ashamed that I had, after spending 40 years of my life representing police officers, didn't even know. I shouldn't say it that way. I mean, you know they're out there, but I didn't know what they were dealing with. They were off my radar screen. I wasn't thinking of Charles Manson at the time myself. And I didn't realize what these people, what these COs deal with on a day-to-day basis. So the next thought that came to my mind when, after having that epiphany, was to sit down with Roy, Timmy, and Bob, and Jason, and the board, and I said, you know what? I gotta know. I gotta know who does this job, who gets drawn to it, and how can they survive doing it? And I don't even mean physically, I mean mentally. And what happens to their families, and how do their families react, and what kind of dynamic can there possibly be when someone spends their life in jail and then comes out of it? I mean, I had seen, particularly in the state police, troopers who worked undercover being dramatically affected in their families. And I looked at it here, although COs aren't undercover, what they're doing is, in fact, living under adverse jailing conditions and what happened to them. So this case, there's a method I'm building to an incredible crescendo here. This case is about that. This case is about the people that do this job. I indicated to you before that even though this is my only candidate, I will not be involved in this, but I have fingerprints all over this case because the fingerprints that you're going to see are the fingerprints of showing several things.